will also financially get behind it, because from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh,
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Thousands of U.S. Marines poured into Taliban-controlled villages of southern Afghanistan. It is President Obama's first major operation to defeat the Taliban insurgency. Marine Colonel Christian Cabanis says the aim is straightforward: seize the entire Helmand River Valley, home to the world's biggest opium-producing region.
We've been able to squeeze the whole river valley at the same time. It's really disrupting their ability to reinforce any area, because every area is under pressure at the same time.
Officials describe Khanjar, or Strike of the Sword, as the largest and the fastest moving operation of the war's new phase. It involves nearly 4,000 Marines and 650 Afghan troops. Earlier, President Obama defined the goal in Afghanistan.
I have a very narrow definition of success when it comes to our national security interests, and that is that Al-Qaeda and its affiliates cannot set up safe havens from which to attack Americans.
Officials say the strategy is to clear the Helmand region of insurgents, hold the area, and then build by winning over locals who are sympathetic to the militants by helping to develop the area.
We want to help ensure that your people are benefiting from development and improved agricultural systems and education systems and healthcare systems.
Ian Kelly is U.S. Acting Assistant Secretary of State.
We're starting off with it's the combat operation now. What we are positioning ourselves to do is to go in behind this combat operation and be part of the build part of hold and build.
In the last few years, as the U.S. focused on Iraq, the Taliban made a violent comeback in Afghanistan, wreaking havoc in much of the country's south and east. Michael O'Hanlon of the Brookings Institution says the stakes now are high.
Because we've been losing a war that we thought we had won, and this is sort of our last best chance to get it right in the course of 2009, 2010.
The Taliban took control of Afghanistan in 1996, but was ousted from power in a U.S.-led invasion in 2001. Ravi Khanna, VOA News, Washington.
War is personal, and the United States Marines are the enemy's personal nightmare. Welcome back to More War Monday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube, our X Spaces simulcast, Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social Plus, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and Roku. Well, first, yesterday was the 20th anniversary of U.S. Army Colonel David Hackworth's death. He was a great loss to all military members, but his leadership skills and the example of his moral courage to fight for us, the us being the little guys over and on the battlefield. Those traits live on in us if we can teach it right. So check out my article about Colonel Hackworth at amac.us. That's amac.us. We need to honor him and educate folks that are in the system now on his ideas, because I guarantee you the system is not going to educate those troops on David Hackworth's zeal for fighting for his men in combat. Well, listen to this paragraph from my guest today's book. It highlights the nature of the challenge the U.S. Marines faced in 2010 as they moved into Afghanistan's toughest province to fight in my opinion. That's what you just saw in the clip. So, quote, west of Kandahar is a hot, dry, and mostly barren land known as Helmand Province. The Helmand River runs through it, and the majority of the hard people who occupy this land live near the river. The further west you go from Kandahar, the more austere life becomes. Helmand has no electrical grid. Over 99% of its people live without electricity. The Afghans in Helmand Province live in scattered tribes, some of them nomadic, others living in hamlets and villages made of mud. And they hold tribal grudges that go back for centuries. They hardly identify as, quote, Afghan, unquote, but rather they each identify with their own tribe, close quote. Well, my guest today is Marine combat veteran, intelligence non-commissioned officer, and author Matthew Bruneman. His book, War Business, The Hired Guns of Helmand Province, tells the story of his Marine brothers and himself in Bravo Company, 1st Battalion, 1st Marine Regiment in their fight against the Taliban, of which that opening clip was the beginning of. Matt, welcome to the Rob Maness Show.
Hey, sir. Thank you very much for having me. I think your sultry voice makes you a good candidate to read the audio book if you need another side gig.
Well, link up with me on that one, and I'll be happy to chat about that. But thank you very much. It's never been called sultry, but it has scared a lot of the enemy when I talked in the clear on the radios from the jet. I flew B-1 bombers as a backseater many hours over Afghanistan, including in Helmand Province, man. Well, hey, I guess I'm so glad to see troops that are face to face with the enemy, that see the blood, the guts, the sweat, the tears, the emotions that run the entire scale from hatred to extreme love, and anger and frustration, all of that, write books. I just want you to know that I really appreciate it. And I want to ask you, it's been, 12 years now maybe since you guys were over there and you ended your tour. Why now? In your book, you say, I want to tell the story of my brother Marines that fought, lived, some died, some came home broken. And why was it important to tell their story right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So this actually was a project that was about 2-3 years in the making. So I started started writing at the beginning of 2022. So you could say every man handled the fall of Afghanistan differently, some better than others. And one way that I took it was writing about it, writing about just the motivation from how shameful it was, the way the war ended, and watching, I guess you would say, all the lies about, people testifying, saying, "Oh yeah, we didn't know how this would end so badly or so quickly," and it was an egregious affront to the men that were on the ground, because anybody who's ever spent more than 10 minutes working with Afghan security forces would have told you that it would have happened as fast as it did. And I had been messaging veterans, asking, "Hey, checking in, how you doing? Obviously this is a momentous moment for us. What's going on? How you doing?" And messaged one person that was still serving, and he had said, I don't even pay attention to the news anymore. I don't know what's happening over there." And it was just a little bit heartbreaking that, a service member still serving doesn't even want to know what's going on over there. So eventually I just started putting pen to paper, or I am a Marine, so putting crayon to paper. And a couple thousand words later, I started thinking maybe this actually might be a book. So started with the end of the war, and then also started it with just being able to tell my family I'm not alone in the veteran community. When I say I didn't really talk about my service much, I wanted something for posterity for my kids, and then also just my parents and siblings to know, like, hey, this is what I did. This is what we did. This is the life I lived. And it's kind of funny. I got out in 2013, so right after the Marines exfilled from Helmand Province, withdrew from Helmand Province, got out in 2013. My wife and I had been together eight years now, and first time she read the book, she was like, "I didn't know anybody shot at you." So it's just a representation of veterans who never speak about their service for many, many reasons. But I felt like I had the opportunity and the words, so I started putting them down, and then wrote the first 20,000 words. And I thought, all right, no one's going to read this. And then wrote another 30 or so thousand words, and I thought, all right, people do need to read this. There's going to be a lot of benefit to the veteran community, to the American people, and just the families of veterans. Veterans can't really articulate, or choose not to articulate, what the war was like. And combat is such a subjective experience that you could tell somebody, and it'll bring up a lot of internal issues, and throw you off your game. But those people they're not going to understand what it's like. It's too subjective. It's kind of like fatherhood. You tell somebody, "Hey, fatherhood's great," but they won't understand it until they have their first kid. And combat is on the other side of the spectrum, but similar. You won't know about it until you've been through it.
Yeah, even for me, who I was an air guy, so I wasn't on the ground. But reading what you wrote, I recalled a story. We were in a kill container over by Nixon's Nose, northeast part of the country. You probably know where that reference is at. One night, it's like go dark 30, and we hear these two kids talking on the radio, because we're all on TACSAT, and you could hear them. And I called the AOC and said, "Where are those guys?" Because they were calling for help. And the guy comes back and says, they're way down in Helmand Province in a fighting position, and they're taking rounds, and they're calling for somebody to just come, not even drop a bomb, just come fly low over these guys and scare them off.
Yeah, come do a show of force. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, to give you an idea of exactly the love that people have for each other, Americans, we did a supersonic run and went down to low altitude at night, and boom, those bad guys and ran them off, and those kids survived. So that's a long way, as you know, to go from Nixon's nose all the way down to Helmand Province. But
essentially the other side of the country.
Exactly. And most people don't realize how big Afghanistan is. But, I don't even think about that story. I've never really told it that other than amongst my own friends, that I've worked with in the Air Force and everything. But your book brought that memory back up for me, and I appreciate that. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you, is because when I read the book after you sent it to me, I was like, man, we have got to let people know about this. We got to take a break here in a second. But tell folks about this Memorial Day sale and event that you guys are doing real quick. You got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. So we partnered with Deployment Cigar Company, and we're going to do a virtual bourbon and cigar event. So you go on deploymentcigars.com and click their virtual event, sign up for it. What you're going to get is a package in the mail. You're going to get 4 tastings of bourbon, a few cigars, and an advanced copy of the book, and then we'll all hang out together for an hour or two and enjoy the book, or enjoy the cigars. Probably won't read it, but enjoy the cigars.
Well, maybe you'll be inspired to read it after what you hear, listening in and enjoying the bourbon and the cigars. Well, Matt, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll see another clip, and I want to give Matthew a chance to talk about his 500-day deployment in this situation. It's one of the things that really makes this book very interesting. He's got a lot of coverage and a lot of time in the dirt, in the bud, in the blood of Afghanistan and Helmand Province. We'll be right back with Matthew Brunneman.
Come on. They're right there. Let's go. Move.
This is C.J. Chivers of the New York Times. The Marines of Kilo Company, 3rd Battalion, 6 Marines had been pushing through Marja, a Taliban-held area in southern Afghanistan. The Taliban were resisting. Often their tactic is to hit and run, and they aren't known as accomplished shots. But on this day, they massed and attacked 2 Marine platoons. They also had at least one man with them the Marines considered to be a sniper, which was unusual.
Hey, Bennett, the tree line in between both the buildings. Look at the tree line right in the middle of that. Deep where those impacts just were. They're squirting both ways.
The squirters, as Sergeant Brian Rogers, a squad leader, called them, were Taliban fighters a few hundred yards away, trying to escape across the open steppe. The sergeant ordered several Marines, including Lance Corporal Travis Vacola, who was 20, to suppress the Taliban positions with gunfire.
I want you low, though, Vacola. I got it. Hey.
At least one sniper, maybe more, was adjusting his shots. He'd almost determined the range and was overcoming the stiff crosswind. Listen closely as bullets pass overhead from a rifle heavier than a Kalashnikov.
Right over.
The Taliban usually shoot poorly. Not today. Sometimes in a firefight, inches matter. A dirt wall in the right place, like this one, can mean the difference between living and dying, especially at times like now, when a gunman in hiding has found the range.
Hey, it's accurate fire! Give you a direction and distance.
The sniper is likely using a rifle like these, which were found hidden in an Afghan home several hundred yards away. They're Lee Enfields. One was made in 1942. In the right hands, it's still deadly.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're talking with the author of the book, War Business, The Hired Guns of Helmand Province, Marine combat veteran and intelligence specialist Matthew Brunneman. And Matthew, you spent over 500 days in Helmand Province during this operation. And you were not in some big POC somewhere behind the lines. You were out at a little operating, I won't even call it a base, really, location called Boldak. And you had your problems with snipers, just like what we saw in that setting, didn't we?
Sure did. So I actually did 2 deployments to Afghanistan. I was one of those psychopath veterans that had to go back and begged and pleaded, please send me back to Afghanistan. I did my first deployment, and that was a lot of counter narcotics, aerial interdiction, taking opium, processed poppy, taking opium and heroin off the battlefield before it leaves the country, which was part of why Helmand Province was so important. But more to what you're speaking on with the sniper. So on my second deployment, Bravo Company 1-1, actually all of 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, we were scheduled to go home in 24 hours. And on the night, the eve of our redeployment back to the United States, the large attack on Bastion, the famous attack in 2012, where the Taliban had infiltrated Camp Bastion, Camp Leatherneck, and started destroying Harriers. The rest of the battalion went home, and Bravo Company, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, we were lucky enough to stay. So we stayed. A small group of us, about, 12, 13 of us, pushed out to where we lived, which was Patrol Base Boldak. And out there we had two main issues. One was an IED builder. He was very prolific. And another one was a sniper. And I know you read the book, so you saw that the DOD is requiring us to redact and hide the sniper's name. For what reason, I do not know, but I can only speculate. But this sniper was very smart. He would operate in a village that we did not have permission to go into. So he basically had complete freedom of movement in this area. And so what you see in the video of those Marines in Marja trying to engage that sniper, that very accurately sums up the issue. Most engagements, sniper or not, most engagements are happening hundreds of yards away, hundreds of meters away. So trying to locate someone at distance is a challenge, but also the unique infrastructure of Helmand Province, which is mud huts. The sniper that we were trying to take care of, he would create murder holes in the mud walls. So he would cut a couple inch hole in the wall, a couple inches in diameter, and fire from that. So it would be nearly impossible to actually pinpoint him, which, we would call in guys like you for air support. But if you can't locate the exact compound, then nobody's dropping anything. So it was a very unique challenge in that aspect. And for a while there, he was putting in a lot of work. And I always loved snipers. I always thought they were on my team. And then, you think they're really cool, which they are, until you're on the other end of sniper fire, and then you start getting a different understanding. So we spent months trying to get this guy. We created, small scale squad level operations. We jokingly named them Operation Bullet Sponge. So since I was the intel guy, I was always talking to locals, trying to answer the commander's priority intelligence requirements. So I was the bullet sponge for Operation Bullet Sponge. So go put me out and about and start drawing fire. And that does take its toll on you. But Marines are, that's just, if that's the job, it's going to be done. But we never got this sniper, never got him. We turned the battle space over to another Marine unit, and they had to put work in with him. And strangely enough, about 5 years after I got out of the Marine Corps, I was in a gun shop buying a gun, and the guy doing my background check was looking at my ID and said, "Bruneman, were you ever in Afghanistan? Were you ever in Boldak?" And ended up, he was the intelligence counterpart that I had relieved when I got to Boldak. So it was small world, extremely small Marine Corps. He asked if we ever got this sniper, and reluctantly had to tell him no, we did not. And he was telling me that his entire squad was, if they weren't shot and removed off the battlefield, they were all medically retired when they got back from PTSD, just from how menacing that type of environment is. It might seem a little bit weird that Marines would say getting shot at is menacing, but I would say it's a little bit more complex than that. The way our rules of engagement was Marines getting shot at as a permission slip to kill the enemy. So that wasn't the issue. It was just the constant, overwhelming nature of, supersonic sledgehammers flying by your head every day, every couple of days. Got a little bit unnerving.
And in your case, I mean, you and I think one other person, as you described it, were going out to the villages, trying to meet the elders and all that stuff. So you never knew when it was you were gonna hear that sound, right?
Yeah, that's right. So myself and our corpsman, we were working very, very tight together. He would offer to help treat kids and things like that. So basically, he was just, come on, give us some information. We'll make sure we take care of you in every way we can. We'll give you all the evils of Western medicine and clean water. Just tell us where this sniper is, and we would just be going out there, and essentially both of us were just bait, in a good way, I suppose. It's just the way the job was going to get done. For that sniper to check in on station and say he's there to work and it's time to dance. So that's what it was. That was Doc Warren. Very, very hard war fighter right there.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned your job. Part of your job was to fulfill the commander's priority information intelligence requirements. But you also talk about how another part of your job, and just as important, was to prevent the Taliban from gaining any intelligence gaps in you all's operation. How did that work? Since you were like a one-man band out here in this forward base or this patrol base, do you think you were successful at all, or could you tell? Did you get indicators that said how successful or not you were in trying to prevent the Taliban from seeing your gaps in intel?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say, for the most part, we had a lot of wins. We're doing good with that, but we definitely had some failures. So I would measure the failures in when we would set off IEDs. The battle space was very, very big, especially for 13 Marines. So if they know exactly where to put that IED, and that we're going to walk down that same spot, patrol down that same spot, then clearly we messed up, right? So we would do our best to do patrol debriefings and basically map out every single place that we've been. And that way we don't go over the same place twice, but just some roads are more accessible than others, and just mission dictates, hey, we got to get here in a hurry. Let's take a path that we know, things like that. So the last time I was party to setting off an IED, it was I would say October 12th, 2012, and the night before, I had met a guy who said he had some intelligence on the sniper, and maybe he baited me into it, but I said, all right, we need to go back and talk to this guy. So we left early in the morning. It was only four of us. Four of us went, and I was the intel guy. I wasn't squad leader or team leader, so I wasn't in charge of the patrol route. I should have put more input in there, but I just had this overwhelming, sick intuition that something bad is about to happen. Part of that was noticing the pattern of life. Basically, none of the locals were out. None of the kids were coming up asking for chocolate and water and ballpoint pens, things like that. It was too quiet. And I told the squad leader, I said, hey, I was here last night, same road, going to the same compound, be on your P's and Q's. And about 15 seconds after that, we set off an IED. Maybe it was a pressure plate, or maybe somebody pulled a command wire. I'm not sure. But that would be an indicator of them exploiting our own intelligence gaps, them collecting intelligence on us. It wasn't entirely a one-man army. There was a lieutenant at the base, so obviously, I was supporting him, he was supporting me, but it's a big task for 13 Marines, that's for sure. So they got the best of us a couple of times.
Yeah, and that story really highlights the importance of that kind of activity that you were doing, because it's you mentioned the pattern of life. Even that pattern of your life and the patrol base's life can create intelligence gaps, and that's the worst end of what something could happen where you get hit by an IED. Well, we got to take another break, Matthew. When we come back, I'm going to show a little clip about funding sources for the poppies. Remember, Helmand Province, biggest producer of poppies, and where do you get from that? Heroin, etc., drugs. You're going to be surprised by this funding source. We'll be right back.
But with Brandon, it's always cutting edge stuff happening in the world, and it's not just from the political angle, because you can get that on other platforms, but it's always from the biblical angle. So you're dealing with a guy that loves Jesus, you're dealing with a guy that's very intelligent, you're dealing with a guy that is cutting edge conservatism, and you're dealing with a guy that wants to be biblical all at the same time. And so for that reason alone, I hope many, many people will not just lift up his ministry in prayer, but will also financially get behind it, because from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
USAID has been busted multiple times for actually cultivating the poppy and heroin production in Afghanistan. Exactly, in Afghanistan. This was actually the inspector. There was it was one of the adjacent units. I don't think it was directly overseeing USAID, but they published a whole report on this. That basically USAID was keeping the poppy production alive by doing what was said to be irrigation and agricultural sustainability, but targeting it in the heroin network. And this, by the way, remember the Taliban banned poppy production, and it was after that ban that Afghanistan became the source of 95% of the world's
Experts
heroin.
say that Russian hackers found a way to hack our utilities.
War Monday, and we're talking with Marine Corps combat veteran and former intel specialist Matthew Brenneman about his book War Business: The Hired Guns of Helmand Province. And Matthew, I had to show that clip. That's recent. That's not an old clip, because the USAID, the scandal it just keeps getting worse. Now, I'll be honest with you, as a commander, based on the intelligence that my weapons guys and I were seeing, we suspected there was some U.S. government involvement with the poppy trade, even when the last time we were there. But we never had any hard evidence of it. And apparently now there is. How does that make you feel after all that work and people lost and lives disrupted, destroyed?
I think it's great that you bring this issue up and show that video. The poppy, heroin, opium aspect of the Afghan war and Helmand Province specifically boils the blood of a lot of veterans. You can ask 100 veterans and you'll get 150 different stories on who was doing what with poppy production. Some veterans are saying, hey, we were burning fields down, and others were saying, no, we were protecting them. It is unsettling for sure. Mike Benz is right about the USAID being involved in the production. At the very least, if you look at the city of Marja from the very first video that you showed, that was a USAID project. The USAID built Marja. And then if you look at Marja on a map, it is the infrastructure and the canal system is completely indicative of something. It's specifically there to grow agriculture. Now, USAID can say, yeah, we're just trying to help flourish agriculture, but nothing grows out there. Maybe 5 or 6 crops will grow in Helmand Province, one of which is poppy. And the kicker on that is poppy is so much more lucrative than any other crop. We can't have the Afghans grow cotton, and because if we fund cotton production, that goes against U.S. laws about funding crops that go against U.S. production, our own cotton production. So if you ask an Afghan, hey, we were told to convince them to grow something other than poppy. You ask them, why don't you grow cotton or whatever else can grow out here? They would look at you like you're a madman. Why would we use our little amount of resources and water to grow something that is not as lucrative as poppy? On top of that, one area that I would push back with Mike Benz is the Taliban did in fact use opium production for funding. So yes, Mike Benz is right that the Taliban did originally take power, and part of their rhetoric was to ban poppy production. But once the war started, that became a cash cow. So in other things like their faith, like with Ramadan, the Taliban would leave leaflets saying, hey, if you're fighting against, if you're in jihad with the Americans, don't worry about Ramadan. Allah's going to forgive you. So the same thing happened with poppy. First they were against it, but once it became a necessary form of their jihad, then they started using it. My first deployment was very centered on interdicting opium. So myself and one other intelligence Marine, we got plucked from our unit to help stand up a task force. It was an aerial interdiction force. Basically, we would fly around Helmand Province, Nimruz Province, the southwest Afghanistan, and we would interdict the opium that was going to be leaving either to Iran or to Pakistan. So we'd have to get it before it got to the border. Myself and the other intelligence Marine on that, our role on that task force was probably the coolest thing any intelligence analyst has ever done. So we got access to about $4 million worth of tracking devices and video cameras and audio recording equipment. And I do have to be a little bit vague here. You read the book, you saw how much had to be redacted from here, but we would use our newfound skills to make sure that we got that opium before it left the country, and find out what compounds are being used to bed down as they're staging for opium. So we did about a little over 400 helicopter-borne raids, interdicting millions of dollars of opium. A couple of times we got really lucky, took some Taliban senior leaders off the battlefield, which was pretty awesome. But where did that opium go when we brought it back to the base? I can't say. I don't know. Wasn't privy to any of that. But yeah, it's just I am now very much questioning what was going on with Poppy, what was going on with the opium.
Yeah, and rightly so. We should be questioning that because we're there fighting in the name of the United States of America, supposed to be on this noble mission of essentially self-defense after 9/11, at least when I was there anyway. And we even knew about it or had our suspicions about it in mid-2005 at the end of my last combat deployment. So, yeah, I mean, we should be, and we should be irate about it. And I think, I don't know, I think you're right about the ban. I think the ban was basically rhetoric, and then they did another thing behind the scenes because there's the whole concept in fundamental Islamism about lying when you're in a jihad and those kind of things. So yeah, well, we got a question from the audience. Let's go ahead and take that before we get to this last break. Go ahead, Rob. Rob is our host.
Hey, Colonel, we have Colonel Burton.
Hey, thank you both for your service and Semper Fi. As a multi-generational Marine, my question to you is this. I have a grandson, and I'm curious more than anything, and I want to know your opinion on this. What will it take for you? Are you ready for your son and grandsons to serve in the Marine Corps? And if not, what do you need to see in terms of whatever you think you need to see to feel good about your children serving in the Marine Corps and possibly giving their lives?
That is a great question. If I could go back in time, I would absolutely go back to Afghanistan. I'm extremely grateful to serve with the men that I served with. Such a formidable experience. Now, I think the most important part of your question is, would I send my sons? I would not. I wouldn't send them to Afghanistan if I had that sort of power. I wouldn't be excited for them to serve at this moment. But, there's so many amazing benefits to being a veteran. So if that's the path he's going to take, then, so be it. God bless him, and I'll pray for him and support him. But when you're asking, what do I need to see? I need to see a just war. I'm not so much as, St. Thomas Aquinas' just war theory, but a war that is clearly defined, a clear enemy. And I right now I take an anti-interventionist standpoint based off of, I feel like the war in Afghanistan was relatively pointless as far as for the warfighter. I know unelected bureaucrats benefited, but what we did out there, I would say, was not worth the blood and bone of Americans. So what I would need to see is, an actual need for us to go, not saying, hey, we're supporting democracy or even, hey, we need to go defend these people somewhere in the Middle East. I would say our culture is so antithetical to their culture that that's not a good enough reason to hand a gold star mother a flag, right? So I would need to see, an actual reason, an existential reason that would benefit the American people. I hope that answers your question.
That's a great question. I think it fully answered the question, Matthew. I'm going to shift back to the opium thing and the poppy thing for just a second, because you have some pictures in the book, and one of them is of a looks like a civilian car being put onto an MH-53, a Marine Corps helicopter. What is going on with that?
All right, so I love those 53s. They'll carry anything. Basically, this happened a lot of times, so I can't exactly say which car this was, which incident this was, but this car was loaded full of processed opium headed for the border. So that we would take everything. We'd take the drivers, the car, the opium, and we'd take it all back for exploitation. And maybe we use that car for some more purposes and put it back in the battlefield and see what happens with it.
Yeah, it's I thought that was very interesting, and I appreciate your honest take on the war and whether you would want your sons to go or not. Look, when I went and took my squadron to fight in Afghanistan, we were still in the ending phase of what I call the victory over the Taliban and Al Qaeda, where we were responding to the attack on the United States, and that fits the just war mold that Thomas Aquinas was talking about in his writings when he was speaking about that. And this just goes to show you when the United States shifts to this nation building, democracy establishment mission, you got to see the wrong end of that, because you were there 5 years after we left, and in that ensuing 5 years, we told the bosses it's time to go home. We didn't. We shifted to nation building and democracy creation. And then 5 years later, the Taliban was winning again, and you had to face the brunt of that. We're going to take our last break. When we come back, we'll talk some more with Matthew, and you'll see a clip from the former JSOC commander in Afghanistan, the Afghani JSOC commander, who's now the chairman of the United Front trying to take back his country. And he's going to tell you how important the Helmand province that is. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Surprised how some of our neighboring countries, particularly Pakistan, has given them open ground to move freely with hundreds and hundreds of fighters, thousands and thousands of tons of the gunpowder and HMEs to build roads, to destroy roads and bridges. Yalda, in the last 1 year in Helmand alone, my corps has conducted an assessment. Taliban destroyed $600 million worth of infrastructure, to include Highway Number 1, Highway 601, Highway 11. People know these names in the UK. Also, the electricity power hydro station in Sangin Durahi. So these things were blown by gunpowder that came directly from Pakistan.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we're talking with Marine Corps combat veteran and intelligence specialist Matthew Brunneman, who wrote a book about his brothers and his experiences in Afghanistan called War Business, The Hired Guns of Helmand Province. And Matthew, I wanted to show that clip. It's from late in the game there, almost just right before the fall, the debacle that we saw. And the gentleman is now the chairman of the organization trying to retake the country, which is a really high bar. I'm not sure that they'll ever be successful in that, but at least there's some resistance to the Taliban still on earth. But at that time, he was the commander of JSOC Afghanistan, and talking about Pakistan letting arms and troops come across the border. I mean, when you're fighting a war like that, where your enemy has sanctuaries, it reminds me of the stories we used to hear out of Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia and all of that. The system put us right back into that, didn't they?
Yeah, when I hear same thing, Laos, Cambodia, or Pakistan, I think, what the hell? if that's, you know, the nexus of terror support, how is that not part of the effort? They play such a large role in funding the fight in Afghanistan. Winning the war would necessitate some sort of intervention there now. So Helmand Province was absolutely a jewel for Western Afghanistan. So they exported 95% of the world's heroin supply, but also the Helmand River was just vitally important to Western Afghanistan. So the Helmand River would run through Helmand Province, but it would also flow through Kandahar. And so my second deployment, we were up in Kajaki. There's the famous Kajaki Dam up there. The Taliban controlled the dam. They control all of the water flowing from the top of Helmand Province all the way down and then all the way to Kandahar. So it was strategically important if you want to support the local people in Western Afghanistan, but also tactically important for the war effort. And the Taliban would use the Helmand River as a way to bring their goods and weapons into wherever their fighting positions were. You know, they would blow up inner tubes, and you know, we denied freedom of movement on the roads, so they would blow up inner tubes and they would float guns and IEDs and everything all the way down the Helmand River into, you know, southern Helmand or into Kandahar. So Helmand was a big piece of just the war in Afghanistan. If you go back to 2008, you know, you see General Stanley McChrystal setting his eyes on Helmand Province as the way to stabilize the rest of Afghanistan. Right. There's the cash cow, and then there's also just complete freedom of movement from the Taliban. So that's where the Marines came in. Marines were in northeast Afghanistan a little bit, but our fight in Afghanistan was Helmand Province. So General McChrystal said, we got to take Helmand Province, and they needed to call in the big guns. So the U.S. Marines went. We did have a little bit of support from some partnering nations, but these guys, that part of their partnerships with us was that they would never leave the base. They would never go out on patrol. So, you know, how much hearts and minds are you winning if you're not out in front? But that was just the nature of the beast in Helmand Province, and the nature of, you know, political handshakes for how we're going to get the troops that we need.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was
just as much of a mess as or worse than we made in Vietnam. Thank God we got out of there when we did, but the way we got out, we'll talk about that in a second. We're going to take a hand here from the audience real quick. We get to the end of the show. Go ahead, Rob.
Colonel, we have Cookie.
Good afternoon, both. Thank you for your service. Very interesting show you have. The question I have is, when you are writing and going through these events and such, what did it do, or how much did it affect your psyche, mental health, like before, during, and after of this process you were going through? And then when you think about how we pulled out of Afghanistan, what's your thoughts there?
So when I would say the writing process to me was overall cathartic. Now you're asking, you know, when I was writing, I would say it's just like a super hard workout. Broke myself down mentally, spiritually, doing all the writing, but you know, you come out on the other side better, stronger. So I'm grateful for that cathartic aspect of it. I'm very disheartened with the way the war ended, but I would point people's attention to Helmand Province in 2012, 2013. What we saw in 2021 was exactly what was happening in 2013 when the Marines exfilled out of Helmand Province. I mean, we were saying goodbye to police chiefs and local police officers and all of our interpreters, and they were saying we're dead, we're gonna die, and you know, veterans couldn't come back and talk about that stuff because of how much one, it sounds like we're making it up, and two, there's so much secrecy that shrouded this war. So, with the Marine Corps specifically in Helmand Province, I would say veterans have been dealing with what we saw in 2021. Marines have been dealing with that since 2013 with the guilt and things like that. So now I have a resolve. I'm on the other side on an upward trajectory. I'm grateful I have a resolve, and think the truth about the war should be discussed, and the truth should be commonplace in the American zeitgeist.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with you. That's why we're doing this show, my friend.
Absolutely.
You spoke earlier about, and you wrote about it in the book about reaching out to other veterans that you fought with, that you served with, people that you know that served there in this combat and everything. What do you hear from them about the debacle of the withdrawal, and do you think it's got an impact on the suicide rates still?
100%. So I write about that in the book. Well, especially with Marines, what we saw in 2021, Marines have been killing themselves since 2013 because of everything that happened in 2021. It's just the American public didn't know that it was happening 8 years before it did. Turning over Helmand Province was horrible for the Afghan people and horrible for the souls of American veterans. It's just crushing and angering is what they say. And also I'm not alone. I have this anti-interventionist stance where if we go into a country and destabilize what little security they have and way of life they have, the local people pay for those errors, and or pay for us leaving too soon or leaving stones unturned. And I'm worried about future wars that we go into where there's no way in hell Americans are going to be able to win the hearts and minds of other countries because they know exactly what happened to the Afghans that supported us.
Yeah, absolutely. In the last chapter of the book, you devoted that to your thoughts on the war as a whole. You mentioned some of them there, but specifically talked about the generals. Tell folks what you wrote about the generals and admirals that were supposed to be winning, but in fact, we got the outcome that we did.
Yeah. So basically, they are liars. They were lying the entire time. I'm not going to say every single general officer, but all the ones that were on TV saying we're making progress, Afghans are doing great. That is a complete lie. Well, they were either lying or they're incompetent. Nobody that served with the actual Afghan army would tell you that they were in any way prepared for that or that they wanted to. I mean, most Afghan soldiers weren't even getting paychecks because their general officers were keeping their paychecks. So in the fall of 21, where we saw generals testifying before Congress saying, yeah, we didn't expect how this would happen. That was just either negligence or a lie. And on the most sinister aspect of it, I would say that our general class, especially the ones in leadership positions, they trade our Americans' bones and blood and lives for board seats, stock option positions at weapons companies. That's part of why I call it war business. War is a business. It is a racket. Bit of homage to Smedley Butler, but a lot of people get a lot of money from the war and get set up, with nice, happy retirement. And it should not be that way. American veterans need closure. We need a reckoning. We need heads to turn, absolutely, for us to move on.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's why I'm opposed to American involvement in places like Ukraine. It's a fight that is not in America's interest, and war is a racket. I've made all my kids have to read Smedley Butler's book, this little pamphlet there that he wrote, just to pay another homage to him, because he was right. I mean, he spent over 30 years of his life. I spent over 30 years of my life and retired as a colonel, and I have the same feelings especially after watching what happened after I retired to what happened to you guys in Afghanistan. You know, the Iraq thing, we should never have done it, in my opinion. It was very clear cut, but the Afghanistan decision just didn't have to happen that way. We could have left when the tactical commanders like me in mid 2005 were saying, "Hey, it's time to go home, declare victory, give it back to the people, let them create their country, and let the chips fall where they may." But couldn't resist it. Couldn't resist it, Matthew. And you're absolutely right to tell it like it is and tell the truth. Well, we got about a minute left. What's the future of the book rollout, and where can people go find the book? And then let's talk about that Memorial Day event before we get to the end of the show here. We got about 50 seconds.
Yeah, right on. So the book is coming out this summer. Pre-orders are going to be open really soon. You could check out my publisher is Wargate Publishing, so you can go on Wargate and put in your email, and you'll get notified when the pre-orders are live. Or you can get the advanced copies from through that cigar event. So that cigar event, when you buy your ticket, you get to chat with us. It's going to be hosted by David Webb. There's going to be a couple of politicos on there, but you'll get a package in the mail with cigars, couple bottles of bourbon, and then you're also going to get an advanced copy of the book, and it has a special page in there saying that this is a limited edition run. So this one behind me right here on my right is going to be the hardcover edition, and the other one is going to be the softcover edition. So there's only going to be a couple thousand hardcovers, so if you want that, you got to jump on it early. Otherwise, you, me, and my mom are getting the softcover editions.
Well, get on it early, folks. Author and Marine veteran Matthew Brenneman, author of War Business, The Hired Guns of Helmand Province. You got to go get it. It's a critically important story. We need to hear from these men's mouths that are still alive and able to tell the story of their buddies, their officers, if they're officers, their senior leaders, and the story of America and the disaster that was the withdrawal of Afghanistan. It didn't have to happen that way. Tomorrow is Training Tuesday. We're going around to all of the news with Steve Abramowicz, so it'll be a great time to save your questions up for those things that you wanted to talk about today but had to wait till tomorrow. I'll see you then.